Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Jack Hagel. State lawmakers return to Raleigh in just a few days for the start of the 2024 legislative session. While lawmakers are expected to focus primarily on the budget, they could also tackle a number of hot-button issues, ranging from immigration to childcare, even homeowners associations. WRAL state government reporter Will Doran joins us now for a preview of the short session. Will, good to see you again.
You too.
For those who don't follow state government as closely as you do, explain what the short session is. How does it figure into the rhythm of lawmaking in this state?
Right. So it is true to the name. Usually it is the shorter session. And the way sessions work here is usually in a 2-year cycle. So in the odd numbered years, you have the long session when they really tackle just about everything that they need to. And then the even numbered years is when the state legislature is always up for re-election. Their elections are every 2 years. And so rather than sitting for months in session and debating policy issues, they need to get out and be campaigning. So in years like this, the even-numbered election years, they really try to focus mostly on the budget, not get too much into policy things, but it can be tempting to tackle some hot-button issues as well.
And as you report, they're likely not just going to focus on the budget. What's on their agenda?
Right. So, of course, the budget is the main thing. They already passed the budget last year, but they're going to come back and make some tweaks to it for the new budget that starts in July. But we know also that immigration is going to be a big focus of this session. Obviously, the legislature is controlled by the Republican Party. Republicans see immigration as a good campaign issue for them this year, and that's at both the national level and at the state level. That's something that they plan to campaign on. So they're definitely going to be talking about that. They're going to be talking about private school vouchers. They're going to be talking about, as part of the budget, should we maybe do any additional raises for teachers and state employees? There's going to be really a whole lot on the agenda.
What are their plans with immigration, and how else might the upcoming election influence what the agenda might be?
So this is a bill. It passed the House last year and actually passed the whole legislature in 2022. It was vetoed by Roy Cooper. It's back up again. It's going to force sheriffs to work with ICE, the Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, the federal immigration police. And most sheriffs, in our 100 counties, probably 90 plus sheriffs already work with ICE. And this is, for example, when someone is arrested and then either bonds out or has their charges dismissed, ICE can contact the sheriff and say, hey, even though that person's supposed to be let out of your jail that you run right now, don't let them out. We're going to send somebody and come get them. And some of the Democratic sheriffs in the more urban counties have opposed this. And part of it is there have been some court cases that say that these detainers are unconstitutional, that, if someone is supposed to be let out of custody, you can't just keep holding them indefinitely. And so there are, some of the sheriffs are worried that they might get sued, lose money in a lawsuit over this, or just that they might be violating people's constitutional rights. But really, it's just a political thing. And so the legislature wants to make sure that all 100 counties are cooperating with ICE, that there aren't these kind of urban holdout counties where it's not happening. And like I said, it passed in 2022. Governor Roy Cooper vetoed it, and that veto was upheld. Republicans did not have a supermajority at that time. They do have one now. And they are planning to go ahead and pass this into law now in this election year. And, I should note there's probably going to be other examples of things that overlap with the election, things that Republicans want to turn into talking points, for the election as it heats up. And for most lawmakers, their race is already over. Nearly everyone in the legislature on both sides of the aisle, their main challenge is in the primary because so many of our seats are either just really deep red or deep blue districts here in North Carolina. But the supermajority that Republicans have, it's only one seat in both the state House and the state Senate. It's a narrow margin. And so there are a handful of competitive districts, and you'd probably expect to see not too many really controversial things come up because even though if there is a really controversial political issue, it's not going to have any effect for most lawmakers. It could have an effect in those half a dozen seats that are going to determine whether or not they keep that supermajority going into next year.
Well, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll dive deeper into the issues that we could see on the chamber floors in this short session. Stick around. Welcome back to the WRAL Daily Download. We're talking with WRAL State Government reporter Will Doran about the upcoming session of the North Carolina General Assembly. Will, as you mentioned before the break, the main reason for the short session has historically been updating the state budget. What changes do we expect there?
The state is going to have about a $1 billion surplus, higher than they expect it to have. So, that's a decent chunk of money for the legislature to be playing around with this year. And there's going to be a lot of competition for how that money should be spent. We spoke with House Speaker Tim Moore recently, who said that Medicaid was short by about $400 million. He said that the Opportunity Scholarship Program, which is the private school tuition vouchers, that was short by about $300 million after they changed the laws to open that up to more families. And then you also have, there was federal child care funding from the pandemic that is drying up. It's no longer available to the state because some of those pandemic era rules have ended. And so that's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars. I think it would be close to $1 billion to fully fund what the feds had been paying during COVID, if we want to do that. And then you're also going to have teachers want higher raises. State employees want higher raises. You're going to have fiscal conservatives who look at this surplus and say, hey, clearly if we have a $1 billion surplus, our taxes are still too high here. And so we need to speed up some of the planned tax cuts that we're phasing in over the next few years. So there's going to be a whole lot of competition on how exactly to spend that money.
Now, the expansion of sports betting was the headliner last session. Any chance we'll see more gambling-related laws this session?
Bet on it, yes. There's probably going to be some attention to how the horse racing rules are set up, and our colleague Brian Murphy has written actually pretty extensively on the reasons why they need to fix this. It obviously all comes down to money. But if you want to bet on the Kentucky Derby this year, that might not be happening, but maybe some of the horse races later in the year, that could be on the table. And then also VLTs are going to be an issue that comes up as well. Those are video lottery terminals, and those are the gaming machines that honestly you do kind of see all over the state, but are technically illegal. The industry has given a lot of money to state politicians here to try to get those legal. And we've heard from Speaker Moore that is going to be something they want to look at in this session as well.
Now, lawmakers spent the last session focused a lot on education policy, too. What could we see there?
Yeah, so education policy is obviously for years a huge focus of the legislature. And we're going to see more. We saw just recently the UNC Board of Governors taking a vote on ending DEI programs at universities. It's possible that the legislature could codify those same changes, kind of make them more permanent. They could also, at the K-12 level, go for some changes that we saw get introduced last year, dealing really with school libraries and taking some books out of libraries, making it harder for kids to check out books in libraries, giving parents access to the list of all the books that their kids have checked out, things like that. That bill didn't move last year, but Republicans did seem interested in it, and so we could see that pop back up this year.
There's also a couple bipartisan issues. One is homeowners associations. There's been a committee meeting on that over the past few months. What do you expect there?
Yeah, that's a tricky one to predict. Last year, the House passed a bill that would have really restrained the power of HOAs to foreclose on people for minor stuff. Say that you had a $20 unpaid fine because you didn't cut your grass one week and you just forgot to pay it, or you were renting out your house and your renters didn't pay it and also didn't tell you about it. Right now, the HOA can take your house over that, and this law would have stopped that. It would have really upped the threshold. That passed the House. When it got to the Senate, they killed that section. They really watered down some other parts of the bill that dealt with some other issues in the bill, and there was just a stalemate. So like you said, there's been this committee meeting. We've been covering it for months. They're writing a report to kind of figure out, okay, how can we find some middle ground that, the industry will agree to, but can also give homeowners some more legal protections. And so will that actually get a vote? I don't know, but that is going to at least come up and be debated, so we'll be watching that.
Another bipartisan issue has been medical marijuana. It stalled in the House last year, had support in the Senate. Do you expect to see any movement this year?
Again, that's something, it passed the Senate not just last year, but in 2022 as well. Both times the House did nothing with it. Leadership really didn't even say why they weren't taking up votes on it. It's just been kind of radio silence from the House. Clearly, there's some sort of opposition there. We just Don't know exactly what it is, but because of the way that the sessions are set up, the House is eligible to vote on it again this year. It doesn't have to go back through the same process of all the committees in the Senate. It could just go up for a House vote. There was huge bipartisan support for it in the Senate. All the public polling that we've seen on medical marijuana for years has showed that it has well over 70% support here in North Carolina, and that includes, majorities of Republicans, majorities of Democrats, majorities of different age groups, every kind of demographic you can think of. So it's something that has a lot of popular support. Already passed one chamber, just needs to pass this other chamber, but it's been years that it hasn't passed. So will this be the year? It could be. We'll have to wait and see.
What else are you going to be watching?
Well, I mentioned the childcare issue earlier, and I do think that is going to be a huge issue for the Chamber of Commerce, actually. I was talking with a spokesperson over there, and they see it as a workforce development issue. I mean, we have so many open jobs here in North Carolina that companies can't fill, and they're worried that if childcares start shutting down because they're not able to pay their employees enough, or they're just not able to make ends meet without some additional government funding coming in, then people are going to have to quit their jobs to take care of their kids. And so the chamber is pushing not just for funding on that, but for some policy changes on childcare as well. So I think, parents or business owners might be really interested in following some of that work. We're probably going to see some talk about guns. I don't know that we'll actually see any votes on guns. I know that to kick off the session, Democrats are going to be hosting a presser with some gun safety activists pushing for more firearm safety laws. That's not going to go anywhere. But it is, an example of, Democrats kind of putting themselves out there and saying, hey, voters, if you give us more power in the state, here's something we're going to do for you. There will probably be plenty of other things that we see from the Democratic side, along those same lines as well. A lot of this session is going to be setting up the elections and doing things that are going to, help set up ads and political attacks and things like that. So, it should be a lot of action packed into probably a fairly short amount of time. The rumor is they're hoping to get out by the 4th of July weekend and let people go on vacation and then start their campaigns. So we'll see if that holds up.
Yeah, I've heard that one before. Going to be a very busy few months, and I know that you and our NC Capitol team will be all over it, as always. Thanks, Will.
Thank you.
That's WRAL State Government reporter Will Doran. For his preview of the upcoming legislative session, go to the NC Capitol section of WRAL.com. I'm Jack Hagel. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for listening to the WRAL Daily Download and for making us part of your morning routine. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. It's a daily email with Triangle news, events, and headlines to help you get ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.